All right, welcome to today's explainer. Today, we're unearthing a really incredible map to inner peace, and it's actually hidden inside a 2,500-year-old riddle from an ancient Buddhist text called the Vammika Sutta. Okay, let's dive right into this, because it's a completely fascinating psychological breakdown, but it's dressed up in this bizarre, almost captivating story.
So just picture this scene for a second. You've got a monk named Kumara Kassapa, and he's resting out in a dark forest. Suddenly, out of nowhere in the dead of night, this glowing deity appears, literally lighting up the entire woods, and hands him this super eerie cryptic question. What is the anthill that smokes at night and burns by day? The deity tells him, only the Buddha can answer this riddle, so off the monk goes to find him, and the Buddha starts to decode the whole thing. And the Buddha's very first revelation to the monk is that this physical anthill, it's actually a metaphor for us. It represents the fragile human body, made up of the 4 basic elements. And if you think about it, just like a real anthill, our bodies are incredibly fragile, they're impermanent, and they require this constant, literally unending care just to maintain. But that still leaves the big question, what on earth is the smoke in the fire? Well, what's really fascinating here is how perfectly this ancient text nails modern anxiety. Smoking at night is all about how we lie awake in the dark, tossing and turning, overthinking and worrying about what we have to do the next day. Our minds are just constantly turning out smoke. And then, burning by day is what happens when the sun comes up. We physically burn up all our energy acting out those exact anxious thoughts through our bodies and our speech. So yeah, we smoke at night and we burn by day. Moving right along to section 2, the decoder and the tools, equipping the mind for the dig. Now, the riddle doesn't just stop at diagnosing the problem. The deity story actually introduces 2 more figures. A wise Brahmin who's instructing a young student named Sumeha to take direct action on the smoking, burning anthill. The Buddha decodes this part for us too. He says the Brahmin directing the dig represents the fully enlightened Buddha himself, guiding the process. And the digger, Sumeha, well, that represents any student in training. So that's you, that's me, or really anyone who's actively trying to figure out the inner workings of their own mind. And this brilliantly illustrates the method, because the Brahmin gives Sumeha a surprisingly intense command. He tells him to take his sword, dig straight into the anthill, and pull out whatever he finds. The sword here is noble wisdom. It's sharp, it's piercing. The point is, you can't just sit around passively thinking about your problems. You have to actively slice into them with continuous, persistent effort, and just keep digging. Let's move to section 3 and see how this builds. Excavating mental obstacles, confronting the surface-level blocks. So, as Sumeha plunges his sword into the dirt, he starts uncovering a series of really bizarre items buried just under the surface. The very first thing he hits is a heavy door bolt. The Buddha decodes this as avidya, which means fundamental ignorance. It's basically this massive, heavy lock on the door of our minds that completely stops us from seeing reality as it actually is. And the instruction? Lift the bolt out, throw it away, and keep digging. Now, what's really interesting about this next part is what happens when the sword hits a toad. I know, it sounds totally absurd, right? But a toad actually perfectly symbolizes our next mental block. The Buddha explains that the toad represents despair and anger. Think about it. A toad just kind of sits there in the dark, puffs itself up, and can literally be toxic. That is exactly what buried rage feels like when it's just sitting under the surface of our minds. So pull it out, toss it away, and dig deeper. Going further down, Sumeha unearths something a bit more conceptual, a 2-way path, or a forked road. This represents vicikiccha, which is doubt. It's that paralyzing hesitation that totally stalls any spiritual or personal progress we're trying to make. Because let's face it, when you're constantly second-guessing which path to take, you end up going absolutely nowhere. The instruction here is crystal clear. Destroy the doubt, clear the path, and keep right on digging. Next up is section 4, cutting deep attachments, the complex layers of human desire. All right, so now we are well past the surface level stuff. Sumeha's sword hits a lie strainer, like an ancient water filter. The Buddha translates this strainer as the 5 hindrances. These are specific, complex mental states that muddy up our mind's water and stop our clarity dead in its tracks. We're talking sensual desire, ill will, extreme sloth and torpor, restlessness and worry, and doubt. Much like a clogged, dirty filter, these have to be completely removed if we want the water to run clear. As the sword goes even deeper, it suddenly hits a tortoise. It's heavily armored, super protective.
The Buddha says this represents the 5 aggregates of clinging, which are form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. We desperately cling to these things, totally convinced that they make up our permanent self or ego, and we just hide inside them like a tortoise pulling into its shell. The Brahmin says, throw it out. Keep digging. Right after that, out comes a meat chopper and a chopping block. This is such vivid imagery, and it signifies the 5 strands of sensual pleasure. Basically, we are the chopping block. We are just constantly being cut, impacted, and provoked all day long by the endless demands of our senses: sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. Lift it out, discard it.
We're now at the absolute bottom of the dirt. This is the final barrier right before the core of the anthill. Sumetha uncovers a raw piece of meat, and the Buddha explains that this meat represents nandi raga, this deep, raw craving, delight, and lust. It's that visceral, super sticky desire that we just hold on to so tightly. It's the primary bait trapping us in suffering. But the instruction stays exactly the same. And that brings us to section 5, discovering true peace, the core of the anthill.
So the crucial point is right here. Sumedha has finally cleared out the ignorance, the anger, the doubt, the ego, the senses, and that raw craving. There is literally nothing left to cloud his vision. He takes his sword of wisdom and strikes the very bottom of the anthill. And what's waiting in the deepest part of the mind? A naga, a majestic, powerful serpent. But shockingly, this isn't another monster to slay. The naga actually represents the ultimate goal, the fully liberated mind, an arahant, completely free from all that burning smoke of anxiety. Now, up until this exact moment, the Brahmin's instructions have been pretty ruthless, right? Pull it out, discard it, destroy it. But here, at the core, he issues this final, beautiful instruction. Let the naga be. Do not harm the naga. Pay homage to the naga. It shows us that once true peace and absolute clarity are finally unearthed, the analyzing, the striving, and all that digging, it has to stop. It's replaced only by stillness and reverence. Because the truth is, we all have an anthill. We all experience the absolute exhaustion of smoking at night and burning by day. So, bringing this 2,500-year-old metaphor right to your doorstep, my final question to you is this. What is your mind smoking about tonight? And, more importantly, are you ready to pick up that sword of wisdom and actually do the hard work of digging it out? Thank you so much for exploring this remarkable ancient map of the mind with me. Keep learning, keep digging, and I'll see you in the next explainer.